Hello and welcome. My name is Emily Prieto, and I'm the co-host of the Seeds of Tao podcast alongside my husband, Joshua Prieto. We're also the co-owners of the Seeds of Tao education platform and incubator for regenerative entrepreneurs. If you're new to the podcast, this is a podcast for impact entrepreneurs creating regenerative enterprises. We often get asked what exactly a regenerative enterprise or impact entrepreneur is. So if you're wondering, a regenerative enterprise builds triple bottom line profits through the practice of ethics and principles that lead to a more inclusive, fair, and balanced economy. Impact entrepreneurs, or regenpreneurs, as we sometimes like to call them, are those willing and able to take on the financial and personal risks of starting and building regenerative enterprises. You'll get to know exactly what all that means as you join us for this and future episodes, but know that we welcome everyone to join us as we work to build regenerative economies together. That's exactly why we are here doing what we do at Seeds of Tao. Our mission is to help establish regenerative economies in every bioregion by serving individual regenpreneurs like yourself. In this podcast, you'll hear the startup stories in all their glory from impact entrepreneurs all over the globe. You'll learn and grow the skills of building a regenerative enterprise from your peers, mentors, and leaders. Finally, we'll get to know each other as you engage in the podcast and join the wonderful Regenerative Business Economies Network, aka RegenBen, an open community where peers, colleagues, funders, allies, and supporters of regenpreneurs come together to build and the regenerative economies of the future. Join us every month for a wonderful episode as we collectively move beyond sustainability and into our regenerative future. It all starts now. Welcome to the Seeds of Tao podcast. It's Emily here. We have an amazing guest. Many of you, I'm sure, have been inspired by her words and her books and her efforts around the globe. We have Dr. Vandana Shiva with us today. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you.
Wonderful. So we like to start out our conversations with what got you up this morning and what gets you excited to do the work that you're doing.
Well, this morning I got up for the physio session because I had a very bad fall. So I'm still recovering from that.
Oh, no.
But that's not normal life. It's, an aberration.
Sure.
What gets me up every day normally is to find out what can I do for the earth and what can I do for people and community.
Wonderful. So do you have some type of morning routine that helps you to ground yourself and get in the right space to take on the day?
Well, I don't have any routine in my life because every day of my life is different. And I fit into it, adapted. I keep my principles of living the same no matter where I am and what I'm doing. But the typical kind of routine that you would have if you're in one place all the time, I don't have that.
I see. But yet you have this open and fluent mindset to take on the day as its own unique day, which I think is really powerful.
Yeah, sometimes my days begin at 3 a.m. Yeah? Some days my days begin at a normal 8 a.m. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I adapt to whatever is calling on me. And second, my capacities to serve.
Absolutely. And so how did you get started in the work that you're involved in?
Well, my dream of life was that I would be a physicist, and I wanted to be a compassionate, socially responsible scientist like Einstein. And I, went deeper and deeper, quantum theory, particle physics, and did a PhD on hidden variables and non-locality in quantum theory. So, trying to understand the amazing ways in which nature works has always been a big inspiration for me. But before leaving for Canada, where I did my PhD, I wanted to do a small trek to a favorite forest. And I found the forest was gone. And the stream that came from it was gone. And that's the first time I actually experienced personally ecological destruction. It was like someone had chopped an arm of mine. And that's when I heard about an amazing new movement of women from my region who started to say, we will not let you cut the trees. These forests are our mothers. They're the sources of our soil and water and air. And we won't let you cut them because you're destroying the forests, leading to disasters, to landslides, to floods, to droughts. And even though I couldn't look for them then, I decided every vacation of mine would be spent as a volunteer with women in this movement. So, I'd be in Canada working away on non-locality and quantum theory. And then I'd fly back and spend a month being a student of women who'd never been to school, who taught me all my ecology, who taught me all my biodiversity, who taught me interconnectedness, who taught me humility, that everyone has knowledge because life is a teacher.
Very wonderful. And so at what point did you feel like, I know that you're still an activist and you're still a volunteer, but at what point did you move into the space of a founder of the organizations that you have?
Yeah. So, typical is you do a PhD, join institutions. And, initially I thought I would continue my research in quantum theory, join an institution of science. For a while, I did that, spent time at the Institute of Science. But then I was very puzzled. I said, personally, I have a very inspiring exploration, quantum theory. But around me, I have a narrative that's told to me all the time that the more science and technology a society has, the richer it becomes and the less poverty there is. But I was seeing poverty grow when a trawler came into the coastal fishing. Our fisherfolk got poorer when the chemical fertilizers and the new seeds came. Punjab was destroyed and the farmers got into debt and now they're committing suicide. I said, no, there's something that's not hanging together in this narrative. So I decided to spend a few years understanding this through actual studies, on the ground at a leading institution called the Indian Institute of Management that had decided to have a division, a whole program on management of science technology. I said, that's where I should go. And it was amazing. We did so much research. But one of the studies I did was to answer the puzzle, why is eucalyptus growing all over the town, It's not a native tree. Why is everyone growing eucalyptus? And went deeper into it and found, I call it, the World Bank was hiding behind the eucalyptus tree. The World Bank had given huge funding to convert farmlands to eucalyptus plantations to have pulpwood for one paper mill. Whole state being transformed. And because this study shook up policy, it went all the way to a planning commission. It shook up the assembly and parliament. And the farmers, they said, we will not accept eucalyptus. And you've got to give us our mangoes and you've got to give us our tamarinds. And put to the forest department, we have so much diversity in this land. Of course, the World Bank started to put pressure on the institute and the director. And the director called me and said, I'm so proud of your work, but this is the pressure I'm getting. What should I do? I said, you do what you feel right for the larger institution. But I think this is a good time for me to become truly independent of any pressure in the world, to become free. And otherwise, they'll cut your grants and loans and you'll have to fire some faculty. Don't do that. And that's how I then came back to Dehradun, started the Research Foundation for Science, Technology, Ecology. Also because around that time, the ministry was calling me, can you study this mine? And we shut the mine down. The Supreme Court, on the basis of our study, said, when commerce undermines life, commerce must stop because life must carry on. And I said, this is the kind of work that needs to be done. And so from 82 onwards, my mother was very generous, even before she passed away. She had said, whenever you want to become independent, the cow shed is always there for you. Because she used to have cows. And by the time she was old, of course, she couldn't. So she said, the cow shed is always there. So the Research Foundation for Science, Technology, and Ecology started in the cow shed.
Oh, wonderful.
And then because of the studies I was doing, I did a study on Punjab, why did it erupt in violence? And I started to get called to meetings on agriculture, on biotechnology. So at one meeting in 87, the chemical industry was laying out their plan of how they wanted to do the recombinant DNA techniques, the genetic engineering techniques, in order to take patents on seed. And they said, by the turn of the century, in 87, they were talking about 2000. They said, by the turn of the century, all seeds will be ours. The companies that will win the patents will rule, and there will be 5 companies left to control seed, food, and health. And we will frame international laws that make it illegal for farmers to save seed. But I said, saving seed is the highest duty. Saving the seed is saving the future. And I said, any regime that makes our highest duties and dharmas illegal must be disobeyed. And we must protect the seed. So I came back after that meeting, which was in Geneva, and immediately started to learn everything about seed and start saving seed. And then this is what became Navdanya, the movement for seed saving. Navdanya means 9 seeds. It also means the new gift. The 9 seeds is, of course, diversity. The new gift is the gift of the commons, of sharing, of never having scarcity.
Wonderful. And that has a location at the foot of the Himalayas, doesn't it? There's a farm there.
Well, yeah, the farm grew out of the fact that I would come back from field trips and say, the farmers have saved 300 varieties of rice, or the native rices actually produce more. And, people would say, it can't be. And at a certain point, I got fed up of these urbanites who just could not understand that the reality that they had been taught could be a little off. And so I actually started the farm more as a can-be farm. Come and see the 500 varieties of rice. Come and see that these rices produce more. Come and see how biodiversity gives you more food. The health per acre we came up with. And so the farm is one part of our work. It began as this community seed bank. It grew into an organic farm and a biodiversity conservation center. But out of that grew an Earth University, which offers courses, and your listeners could go to the Earth University courses. And we offer one whole month of learning from the seed and learning from the soil and learning from food and learning from living economies. But we have trained farmers across the country. And since we started, we've trained more than 2.2 million. We continue to work in about 7 states directly. And there we work with farmers to first build their capacity to save seeds, have community seed banks, have seed sovereignty, how to do chemical-free farming, regenerative agriculture, even more importantly, how to create economies that work for the earth and people. And so that is, like I said, 7 states of India. And our work is becoming more and more focused on women, not because we chose to only work with women, but women are the ones who care about the seed and who have knowledge of the seed. And it turns up, they were the ones growing faster and learn, as it is, they knew more. They care. We just finished the most beautiful celebration. 20 years ago, a group of us got together in the negotiations of the Convention on Biological Diversity. And we said, we're just a group of women left now. Where are all the men? Where did they disappear? Because pressure had been put on them. Ecologists weren't being allowed to come and talk about the ecological impact of GMOs. But we were still there because we didn't have bosses. No one could tell us what to do and not to say. So we just smiled at each other and said, just a few diverse women for diversity left, to protect diversity. And we just celebrated a very big gathering of more than 150 women, 100 from India, 50 from around the world. And And our members, the Navdanya members, the women had made their own songs now. Their songs on seed, their songs on Mother Earth, their songs on soil, their songs on food and freedom. And for me, putting a seed into the soil and watching it become a plant to give new seed, and seeing these women grow as seeds of the future, carrying the knowledge to hand over to future generations, that is very fulfilling.
What an amazing energy that must have been. With
it was amazing.
All that positive energy from women who have stepped into a place of power, into a place of using their voice. I know
and that's the word everyone used, energy. So much energy.
Yes. And I know that you are at the forefront activists for women's rights and women's empowerment, though not in typically the buzzword way necessarily, but I'm in the thick of your book, Eco-Feminism, and it is just absolutely fantastic. But I would like to focus on, I'm interested to hear your journey in terms of you becoming a leader and you becoming an activist, dealing with all this legislation and all pressures, but doing it from being a woman and doing that. What did you find or see differently, or how was your journey specifically as a woman stepping into that place?
So, part of the reason I chose physics is you could work on it quietly. I was a very shy child, and I didn't like exposure. And my school made me the head girl of the school, and I said, I'll do everything you want, but I will not run the assembly because it means standing in front of the school. I said, no, I won't. I'll do everything. So they let me get out of that, and I actually said I'll play music, which I used to play music at the assembly. I think the first time I actually, I thought, why use your voice? Such a waste. The first time I found my voice was, there was a dam being built in our region, and of course, every dam and big construction is based on enslaved labor. And some of these laborers had escaped. And I was coming back from a trek, and they were in the bus. And then in the first place, the bus stopped. This, group of goons came up to try and pull them out. And here I was, just stood at the door of the bus. And I said, don't you dare come in. And I realized then that as long as my voice was for me, I wanted to keep it quiet. But the minute it was for others, to protect them from pain, one could have all the voice. And then with nature and, biodiversity and the sea, nature roars, and it helped me roar. And that's what I've done.
Wonderful. And so we talked about that unique energy that the women brought at that meeting, right? And this really powerful feminine energy. I know that we're dealing with a world in general with a very patriarchal, very masculine energy. But even in the world, the sphere of sustainability, regeneration, green movement, that whole trying to make the world better, there's still the vast minority of women that we're seeing, that we're hearing from. So I would love to hear your opinion about kind of the green movement, regeneration, permaculture, sustainability, but with the women's energy being escalated or being more out there, what can the feminine energy do to this movement of trying to heal the earth?
Well, and the women's energy is the energy of the earth and her regenerative powers, then it can do a lot. And in my view, as I've written in my book, Staying Alive, and I was trying to find out, I said, how come everywhere I go, whether it's defending the forests in the mountains, Chipko, whether it's defending the rivers, women, whether it's defending the coast from industrial agriculture, women, fighting against the Bhopal gas tragedy, Union Carbide, women. So my, question was, why is it the women stand? And when I did Staying Alive, which is my own understanding of why is it that women fight to protect nature and are playing a leadership role. And then I realized that, just like we as diverse women were left behind, and we said, no, we'll use our power, a different power. We'll use the power of our marginalization to make big change. If we had not been marginalized, they'd have squashed us before even being there. Just as the big, powerful heads of departments, vice chancellors of universities just pulled out like little flies. And I realized when I wrote Staying Alive that what basically had happened, that as capitalist patriarchy was putting its architecture in place, the science architecture with Francis Bacon, father of modern science, economic architecture, Adam Smith, father of modern economics, Locke, father of governance and property. Suddenly these fathers popped up out of the blue, and all their texts are taught to every child everywhere. I was so fortunate. I was studying simple physics and didn't read this rubbish till I was so old that I could understand every line of rubbish. And I said, how could they even think that way? And how could they get away teaching people 300 years that this is politics, this is economics, this is science? So women were left out of that capitalist patriarchal project. Either they were killed in the witch hunts, or they were left out and marginalized. And so today, when you want to see what is it like to be human in a living earth, women carry that seed. It's not that men don't have that potential, but it was taken away from them because they were thrown into plantations, in the mines, into military, into wars. And the privilege, and this is the irony, the privilege by patriarchy deprived men more of their humanity.
Interesting.
So that's the reason, so ecofeminist kind of grew as an ecological response to capitalist patriarchy. And I think what we've done is we redefined economy, we redefined science, we redefined our relationship to the earth, the reclaiming the commons. And at one level, we could do a much better book than Adam Smith and Locke and Bacon, which future generations should know.
Let's take a moment for a brief promotional break. I know many of you are bookworms like myself because I received many book recommendations over the years from those in the Pando community. I'm now excited to give you a special recommendation. If you love to learn new things from books, and especially books that challenge your worldview and inspire you to make a positive change, then listen up. I've made some new friends at Synergetic Press, an independent publisher that has been publishing paradigm-shifting books over 30 years. Their titles cover a wide range of topics from ecology and sustainability to psychedelics and spirituality. Whether you are interested in learning about the history of ayahuasca, the future of biospheric design, or the secrets of the human mind, Synergetic Press has something for you. Visit their website at www.synergeticpress.com. SYNERGETICPRESS.com. Go ahead and browse their catalog and order online. You can even help support this podcast and wonderful authors we've had on the podcast, like Vandana Shiva and Mark Nelson, all at the same time by using the promotional code DAO20, that's TAO, the number 2, the number 0, at checkout. You can follow the promotional link in the podcast description or show notes for more information. So what are you waiting for? May the mind expansion continue. It's interesting that you brought up that you're seeing the women all behind the lines, right? You're going to the protest, you're going to the demonstrations, you're going to where the women are the ones standing up hyper locally, right? With the things that are most pertinent and in their face and in danger, right? They are showing up. In terms of the bigger movement, we're not seeing so many, right? As global voices. as, which personally, my opinion, we need voices at every level, right? We need hyperlocal, we need regional, we need global voices, and that energy shift towards the feminine. And I know you've been in this space for a long time, and I'm sure have seen a shift in women locally and women globally. What changes have you seen in women power or women leadership or women voices?
Well, besides the diverse women movement we started, Bella Abzug, who was a senator or congresswoman in U.S. Congress, she and I also were among the founders of the Women Environment Development Organization. I remember saying, we do. And this was a global organization, but it got informed from the grassroots. One of the first things we did was we said, let's have a public hearing of movements from the grassroots to tell the world of what really is the sustainability question, what really is happening to the earth. And it's those voices, we had this planetary public hearing in Miami, and that then fed into the whole Rio process and the entire women's perspective on sustainability that went into the Rio process and the policy documents. Women are present at every level where organizations are living organizations, just like a plant begins from the roots and is sustained by the soil. Real organizations that are truly democratic are nourished by people where they are and where they live. And then they find ways to represent those voices at different levels, always coming back to check out, am I doing it right? Give the instruction. Just like we must take instruction from the earth at every step of our lives, we must take instruction from local communities who really face the brunt. They are the ones, they're the thermometers, they're the canaries in the coal mine. So what has happened is some very large organizations have been created which do not have that living feedback system all the time. And they kind of exist unto themselves. And they can often lose their way. And that's why you find, them picking up technologies for extinction, like this gene drive technology. And then huge conflicts grow between the communities who are really protecting biodiversity and the larger organization. My understanding of physics, but as well as my understanding of ecology, teaches me that all larger organizations are made of smaller units. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And when they think that their bigness stands by itself, they do not organize themselves in ways either to serve the earth because they stop listening to the earth, or being relevant to the real movements. The dynamic movements will always be where the problem is. Where Ohio, this chemical spill happens, oil spill happens, that's where the movements grow.
And so where are the spaces that you see that are most important to getting the voice of regeneration out, and not typical sustainability, but really looking at what's happening and what really needs to be fixed? What spaces are needing to be filled by women to push that forward?
Well, the world is a flux, it's a constantly evolving process of space and time. And like I talked to you about, we, the grassroots activists, played a role in shaping international environmental law at the Earth Summit. We played a role in shaping all our laws nationally everywhere. So there's no space where women don't belong. But there are times of closure, not just for women, but for citizens at large. Mm-hmm. And that's when the destructive powers capture policymaking. They capture the United Nations. They capture our governments. And that's the kind of period we're living through right now. Even while the promises of those who capture are hollow and shallow. Take, for example, we are always told, the future of the world is all digital agriculture, digital health, digital this, digital education, digital food, software. Food is software. And then you have the bank that's financing all this collapse. Silicon Valley Bank. Now, of course, left to itself, it's over. But it gets bailed out with tax money. That money should be going to the people who are homeless. It should be going to the people who are sick and without healthcare. It should be going to the children to make sure they have all the care of the world. And I think the challenge we have right now is not just that women belong everywhere, every place, but the culture, economy of care is not just the basis of life all the time throughout evolution, throughout human history, but the leadership of care, its time has come. Yeah? Mm-hmm. And so it's not just that we have a same stack and then we stick in there and say, put the women in there. My dear friend Maria Mies, with whom I wrote the book, Eco-Feminism, used to say, there's a particular way of looking at gender, add women and stir. Keep the old system and just put women and stir. And we always used to say, no, you need structural shifts. Because women can't be stirred into a messy pot and a toxic pot. No, we refuse to be put in that pot. We will shift the world to where it belongs, to a living world of caring and sharing.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know that you've talked about women-led economies. How do you define women-led economies? I know that you've talked about it on your website and you've talked about it a number of different places. How do you define women-led economies?
Well, firstly, even this dominant economy, even that silly Silicon Valley Bank, behind it, and its foundation is women-led economies. Because basically what we have is amazing work by women everywhere. We have non-stop work by nature all the time. So nature's economy and women's economy and people's economy is made invisible, but it is still the foundation. So the justice that is needed is to recognize, but the hydrological system is the big water system. And nature creates that. Women bringing water to their homes, that's a water system, not the four giants that privatize water. So again, coming back to our Diverse Women Gathering, and we're preparing a manifesto that will be released in June on Environment Day. We have a very big section on the women's economy, which has two qualities. It's a gift economy. And just because the gift has been made invisible doesn't mean we get rid of it and turn everything and every transaction into, every relationship into a transaction and every transaction into a commodity. If you were to bring up your children as commodities, you wouldn't be able to bring them up. The biggest thing you give to your children is love and care. Everything else comes after. Mm-hmm. Love, care, and with it, time. They need your time, just as the earth needs our time. And the second thing was the economy of care. But, I've just done a book. It's an Italian publisher and a German publisher. I think the US edition will come out next year. But it was in the peak of the COVID and lockdown crisis. And the Italian publisher said, everyone's talking about care, but no one talks about what the economy of care looks like. So I did a book, From Greed to Care. What does an economy of care look like? If instead of greed as the extractive power, we have care as the circulation and flow that binds society and binds us to nature.
Interesting. There's so many aspects that you've taken on in your books. I know that you're just a prolific writer. And that's been one way that you have been able to use your voice currently. as well as actually getting out there and speaking. Did you, when you got into, I know you talked about not, or being a little timid about using your voice and then kind of stepping into that space because you're empowered if you're speaking for others, which is a very feminine energy, empowering feminine energy, right? That active nurturing. Did you, when you started your time actually speaking out in front of people, how was that for you?
Once I'd got rid of the break, that talking was about ego, talking was about a detached self, that talking was a conversation and a relationship. Even though I was a very reluctant speaker, when I started to speak, and I was speaking to huge crowds, it's really, to me, the same as you and me talking now.
So it was just a mindset shift for you.
It was a mindset shift, yeah.
Nice.
Most issues in life are mindset shifts.
That's so true. Wonderful. And so you've developed this impactful career at, books, we have the nonprofit organizations and things, and you're working hand in hand with lots of really empowered women getting out there and, powerful women, whether in or outside of your organizations. What do you see in the next 5 or 10 years with either, not necessarily with your career or with the women around you moving forward? Where do you see that all going?
Well, as I mentioned, my speciality was quantum theory. And the two things about quantum theory that guide me even now is that there's nothing like a fixed entity in the world. Everything is potential, waiting to unfold. And when I describe the women, who are now writing their own songs, teaching others, we've created 500 women gurus to teach other women how to be regenerative, rooted in their particular culture of place and their particular ecology. But the second very important part of quantum theory is uncertainty. It's irreducible. You cannot get rid of it. So it's this false chasing of certainty and false declaration of certainty that has, on the one hand, led to violence against nature and a violence against women, because in a world in flux, in a dynamic world, your own relationships have to be in flux. But with rigid entities, with my flask, it's sitting there. It'll keep sitting there. It won't move on its own. A plant grows on its own. And I think the key issue about the question you asked is the potential of the women is growing. My uncertainty tells me that the very high possibility is there that at their levels, they will keep bringing bigger shifts. I've met wonderful women who say, this husband of mine, he should call himself the breadwinner. Till I started to learn from Nathania. And now I know I'm the real breadwinner. Because I actually do the real work that grows the bread. And so that kind of shift is happening at every micro level. But we also know, so women in our movement, we saved seeds. Some of the seeds, we didn't got rid of any seed. We said every seed is useful. We just don't know their qualities and any. Among the seeds we've saved are salt-tolerant seeds and flood-tolerant seeds. And when the cyclone came in 1999, these seeds helped communities bounce back. And these are seeds of climate resilience. And they are farmers' seeds. Farmers have bred them. Now women are the seed keepers of these seeds. Yeah. But the point is, you could have such a horrendous cyclone that can just bury all your lands in 6 feet water. So uncertainty tells us that, yes, we have to do the right thing, but we also have to be prepared that we will see more and more disasters. And we have to have not just ecological resilience in our systems, we have to have social resilience in our communities. And I see that growing. And the bigger the systems are, and the more linear the systems are, the more one-directional, I'll make my profits by selling fake food, Silicon Valley, the more vulnerable they are to collapse. To me, that's the story of Silicon Valley Bank. So diversity, resilience, constantly evolving. Those are the keys to the future.
Wonderful. So if you could give yourself some advice, if you could tell the younger Vandana who is about to step into that place as a founder and engaging in these, being really stepping into your leader energy, what would you tell her? What piece of advice would you give her?
Throughout my life, I've followed my conscience. I have sought deep knowledge and acted on the basis of that. I would turn to my younger self and say, yeah, you did it right.
Just keep going. You're doing it all right. That's wonderful. I think that power of just listening to our intuition is something that's been stamped down a lot. And I think that not only does everyone need to pay more attention to that and to nurture a relationship with their intuition, but women have a special, it's just a different energy that they bring with their intuition. We're a little bit more intuitive beings that I have found. And so it really is, your intuition really can be a superpower. It really can be this guiding light if we let it, right? If we don't overthink it or overschedule it or anything, right? But really being in tune with that and being really centered. Was your mother very much the same way? Just very intuitive and did she feel like
my mother was amazing. I do not know a woman like her. My mother was amazing. In those times of deep patriarchy, she became the most highly educated person in her community, was part of the freedom movement, became displaced with the forming of partition, but with an amazing resilience and absolute 100% refusal to be exploited or dominated by anyone. She lived free. And I think so much of my feminism I have borrowed from her.
It sounds like you've just taken up the torch that she started and you've just been amplifying your whole life.
I just republished, she used to write a lot of poetry. And she refused. She said, all these schools teach these silly nursery rhymes of Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down, came tumbling down, and Jill came up, tumbling after. Or rockabye baby on the treetop, when the wind blows, the cradle will rock, and then the baby fall. Of course, now I realize these were all written during the plague. And my mother said, no, there's no way my children will have a diet of these babies die. So she used to write nursery rhymes for us, all based on ecology and nature and trees.
Wow.
And 2 years ago, I just decided to go back to her little old ancient booklets, one on feminism and 3-4 little ones on forests and plants that feed us, and kept them for legacy. Yeah.
Wow. That is so wonderful. I think that that's really one of the ways that we're going to increase our impact with the next generation, whether it's with our kids or the next generation in another way, as this maternal energy and seeing the opportunities that other people don't see, right?
And basically, don't absorb patriarchy in a mechanical way. Put it through a sieve. Put it through a sieve, and allow what you call intuition. For me, is just your full being in full consciousness. Is the whole of you responding to something. That's intuition. When part of you responds to something, it's analytic.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I really like what you touched on about not just absorbing the patriarchy. Like I said, I'm in the middle of your book, and it brings up so many things that I just haven't thought about, right? And I've been realizing how much I've personally absorbed the patriarchy. And I also have a wonderful mother. I love her to pieces. She is one of my lights. But I come from a generation or generations of like silent women. Because, just working with the system and surviving the system, and every generation there gets to be just a little bit more voice. But now we're seeing a lot more voice, a lot more women stepping up and saying, yeah, ladies, you can do this too. You can step into this place. And I think that's so powerful, so powerful. So if you had a piece of advice to give to the women of the world, and like a piece of advice, I know that you give books to the women of the world, but if you could give them a piece of advice, what would you give them?
I don't give advice as a principle. I don't give advice for the simple reason I think it's arrogant for one person to tell another person what's better for them.
Sure.
Every one of us has to find our path. But what I would share with them is my own learning in life. That do not underestimate your power and don't measure it on the patriarchal yardstick.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's so important. Thank you so much for being on with me today. What is a way that we can get involved, that listeners can get involved or in touch with you?
Well, the 3 ways you can be involved and get in touch with me. One is wherever you are, start saving seeds. Start eating with consciousness. Realize that the smallest bite of yours has planetary impact. And do not treat eating as a junk process. It is a living process. Second, you can definitely read the books that show the journey of how I reached this consciousness and how each of us can be participants in creating food systems, and ecological systems that work for the earth and people. The second is you can come and attend courses at our Earth University, which has grown around the seed. And you can go to the website of navdanya.org, Navdanya Earth University. If you key in and put the courses for 2023, you'll be able to see the courses. And then you can write to Earth University at navdanya.net. And if you can, attend the courses. A few now, with of course the 2 years of COVID, they were all Zoom, but now they're on the farm because nature is the ultimate teacher. And third is, if you want to support Navdanya, you get in touch. We always welcome any support that can increase our ability to serve more people and larger areas of the earth.
Wonderful. Thank you again. Thank you, listeners, for hanging out with us for this podcast. All of those wonderful links and everything will be in the description and the blog post. Keep growing your minds, keep growing your hearts, keep growing your impact. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vandana.
Bye-bye.
I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. It really is a blessing and a pleasure to bring each episode to you. So what'd you think? If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review or follow us on the podcast platform of your choice. Each review really does help us to further the reach of this podcast and move our mission forward to build regenerative economies in every bioregion. If you have a suggestion or feedback for us, please let us know in the open and free Regenerative Business Economies Network, known as RegenBen, which is linked in the description and in the show notes of this episode. RegenBen also has an awesome community request form that allows you to suggest guests, register to be a guest on the podcast, and share your own regenerative entrepreneur startup story, or any other suggestion you may have for the community. Without your feedback and requests, this podcast and community wouldn't be what it is, so please let us know. Now, this may be bye for now, but remember, it doesn't end here. It has only just begun. The regenerative economies of the future start now with you.